Hi fam and welcome to a new video. In this video, I am going to be wrapping up the 15 books that I read in August, and I had an amazing reading month. So I'm very excited to talk to you about it. But before I begin, I feel like I need to thank all the people who have recently subscribed to me. There have been a bit of an influx because Book Break UK, which is an amazing booktube channel in the UK, they basically gave me a sort of shout out, and I was like shrieking and essentially crying, and I was so happy because I've always looked up to them, and I thought that they are a great booktube channel, and a bunch of y'all have followed me, so I'm so excited to have you part of this family and this madness that we're here. Anyway, point is, if you are new, say hi. If you are old, ow, hit myself. If you are old, also say hi, because just say hi in the comments. Love to get to know you and all of that stuff. Anyway, yeah, that's basically it. Just thank you for being part of this journey. Generally, why am I getting so senti today? I don't know, but let's get into it. So in August, I read 15 books, as I said, and I had a really good journey. So as you know, usually I get into stats, and for that, usually I get stats bitch, but again she's missing. I can't find her at all. So either I'll have to just retire stats bitch or get a new stats bitch. I think that's basically what's gonna happen. But let's just get in the stats for now by me. So as I said, 15 books. The total pages I read was 4,107. So great going there. In terms of genres, I read 9 genres, alright, out of which 3 were contemporary, 3 were thrillers or mysteries, 2 in the romance or erotica genre, 1 mythology, 1 graphic novel, and then within non-fiction I read 2 history books and 1 book which was essentially about sociology and anthropology and all of that sort of stuff. So that's a separate genre. So yeah, so I think I did pretty well in terms of the kinds of book that I read. But in terms of countries, I read from 6. 6 were from the US, 5 from India, 1 from Bangladesh, 1 from the UK, 1 from Australia, and 1 from Colombia. So yeah, I hit out to some new countries as well this month. So very excited. Gender of authors, of course, I read mostly female authors, so 80% of them were female, 13% were mixed, that is 2 books were anthology, so it had multiple people writing in, so it was mixed, and then 1 book was written by a male dude, which is this dude. But yeah, that was that. I also, one of the things that I look at, if you know that I have a tracker, right, so I will link that up for you. I am very I love Excel sheets, so the tracker, I track various things. One of them is the Bechdel test, which is the Alison Bechdel test, which is that in a work of fiction, do 2 women sit down and have a conversation with each other, and is it meaningful or not meaningful? And this month 80% of the works passed the Bechdel test, so that was just really exciting as well, and I felt that should be known, But yeah, in terms of ratings, let's get into it. I had 2 5 stars. Also, I'm very excited about that one. 1 4.5 stars, so near perfection almost. Then 8 4 stars. 8 4 stars. I don't it's not I'm one of those sort of people who just gives out 4 stars for fun. But genuinely, these books were 4-star worthy for me. So yeah. And then 3 3.5 stars and 1 2-star. And I am now going to talk to you about them. But earlier what I used to do is that I would go either in the order that I read them, or go from the worst to the best. This time I'm trying to switch it up a bit just to see what works, and I'm going in terms of genres. So if that's something that interests you, let me know. If not, just comment down below and tell me what way you would like me to do this, what's best, and if you have any other suggestions, then we can try that out as well. I know people do alphabetically, Books and Lala, she does whatever comes to her mind, or like color coded, I don't know. But yeah, I'm just like, that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna start off with the non-fiction, because I've already spoken about two in a dedicated video. So the first one is The Other Side of Silence by Urvashi Bhutalia, and the next one is Inherited Memory. So the first one I gave 4 stars, and the second one I gave 3.5 stars. Now, I don't really want to talk about it in too much detail, but I will tell you what essentially this was for. It was for the partition literature video collaboration that I did with a bunch of other booktubers as well, Indian booktubers, where we read books about the Indian, Pakistan and Bangladeshi like partition that happened in 1947 and then later in 1971. This happened not too long ago, like in terms of like the partition itself, right? And it still, I feel like it informs a lot of our decisions and a lot of our culture in South Asia. So I felt like it was important for us to know more about that time. So a bunch of us read like fiction works or non-fiction works, which helped us decide like what were like what our country is about and how we became who we became, and I don't know, you get what I mean. But yeah, I learned a lot through this book. So the first book, which is The Other Side of Silence, is basically Urvashi Bhutalia decided to speak to people who usually weren't spoken to, which is women, children, and the marginalized people. So for example, the Dalits or the Christians even, because they weren't really like looked at, right? Because it was a Hindu-Muslim thing. So yeah, so she spoke to all of these people and got their stories and got their perspectives. And it was really, really moving. I really got to learn so much about that time through that book. And I gave it a 4-star because like it was written 25 years ago, so not quite like up to par in terms of like just generally the flow of things, but I still really, really liked it and really loved everything that like came out of it into my brain. The second one which I read was Inherited Memories, and that is essentially because a lot of the partition voices are heard from the west, which is from like the partition of Punjab, but not so much of the east, which is what happened in Bangladesh. And yeah, and like when Bangladesh and Bengal was partitioned, so we basically got to know about them, and this is Inherited Memories because a lot of the people who went through partition have unfortunately already passed. So they spoke to people who were from their like the following generations, and I thought that it was really interesting because they decided to speak to the third generation, so like the grandkids, because it's the grandkids who ultimately like have all of the knowledge and actually hear the stories from the grandparents, because parents don't really like tell their kids all of their stories of like where they're from and what they did and all of that sort of stuff. It's not quite like a thing. So that's essentially what I figured out, and I really liked that one, though I did feel like the stories were a little like I don't know, just there wasn't like a flow to things. So while I did appreciate what I learned, and I liked that I got to hear from this side, and like there were a lot of things that I took away from it, which you can see in that video, I still didn't like love it, but I would still recommend it. Like I would still think that it is an important enough work to be read. The third non-fiction book is Chup, or Breaking the Silence About India's Women by Deepa Narayan. And this is a book that I read for my book club. I have a book club called Consciousness Raising Book Club. We choose a book every month and a half, which basically will help us get to know more about the world and about ourselves. That's the whole idea of it. And then we discuss it in like a nice like space on Zoom. And actually the next book is what's it called? Indian Summer, which is about the Indian partition, which we chose because of all the partition literature that we read in August, and it just got us all curious about reading more about it. But yeah, anyway, Chup is about about feminism, and Deepa Narayan essentially did like some research and interviews with over 600 people, mostly women, some men as well, and she discovered that essentially in broad categories there are 7 habits that women in India have that are very detrimental to them, and causes them to like not quite flourish and be the best version of themselves. And I thought that this was very, very eye-opening, because there were most of these things I sort of kind of knew, like these are things that as a sort of self-aware person who tries to talk about like feminism, etc. a lot, especially within the Indian context, I sort of knew these things, but to see them on page and to see other like people talking about their experiences, it really like fully brought out things. There were of course things that I didn't necessarily agreed with regards to me, but I feel like these are like obviously things that women in our country deal with, and I felt like it was a very, very important read, because it was also very, very simply written. It was just like it's very, very like not quite like fully nuanced. That is the one thing which I didn't like about it, that it didn't really feel academic, which is a good thing, because then like the masses can read it, but like I wish that she had like some pinpoints about like giving us more information about the study that she did, instead of just like giving us like quotes from the study. So that was my only thing, which is why I gave it 4 stars, but I really appreciated it. I thought that it was a solid book that really made you think quite a lot about women in India, and how we are made, sort of, I don't know, that you know what I mean, who we are as people and all of that sort of stuff. But this book, I feel like it needs to be read by a lot of us, especially the men, especially anyone who wants to know more about being a woman in India and all of that sort of stuff. But anyway, that is essentially that. And then now moving on to the other books, I guess. The next genre that we're going to uncover is going to be short stories. And for this, the first book that I would like to talk about is The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans. And this is a book that I've been wanting to read for a long, long time, because everyone has just been raving about it. And I read it and I really, really liked it. I gave it a 4-star. What it is that there were some stories that were 5-star reads for me, and some were just sort of okay. However, none of them were like below a 3.5. So I really, really appreciated that. I think there was only one that was maybe a 3.5. The rest were just stunning reads. Essentially what she does is that there were these very short stories with the underlying theme of like social justice, but mostly about racism, and how that percolates and affects everyone's lives in the US, and generally how people kind of deal with it. So it was kind of done subtly or not so subtly in some stories, but I think what she really concentrated on in this book were characters and their arcs, and I really could see, even though they were short, I could see a person change, or I could see like who these were as people, and I really, really liked that. I thought that like gave me so much to kind of think about, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I do have to say though that I wish that these stories were somewhat longer, because it almost felt like with some of them I didn't quite like get my satisfaction from them. Like, I know short stories don't necessarily have to be like long or like give you a satisfactory ending, but I just personally wasn't a little satisfied with some of them, because I just wanted to know more. Maybe I was just too invested as them as characters. But yeah, I definitely recommend. The short stories that I liked the most were Boys Go to Jupiter, The Office of Historical Corrections, which is the original story, and Richard of York Gave Battle in Vain. I really, really like them, and if you like characters and seeing like character arcs, but with like a social commentary like theme in the middle, then yeah, definitely check this one out. The other short story collection that I read was for young adults in India, but I really enjoyed this one. It had made me wish that I had this when I was younger, because like it would have sort of like helped me out. So if you are a young adult in India or like know a young adult in India, then I would actually definitely recommend you this book. It is, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Again, the thing with short stories, there are some that you give like 5 stars, some that were like just not needed in this one, like Saina Nehwal. Why was it even there? I don't know. It was just whatever. But I really liked it. It covered so many different topics, from like teenage angst to parents fighting to having take sides to the Naxal movement to not being a manly man, and not having to be certain things to be a boy or a man, and like just it just covered so many different things from various different people. Yeah, so it had various contributors, and I really like this one. I think one of my favorites has to be the like foreword, which was written by Shaheen Bhatt, who I absolutely love. She's written a book on mental health called Never Been Unhappier, which is just perfection. You should definitely read that one if you haven't. But yeah, I just really enjoyed my time reading this. I think I read it like in one sitting in the morning one day, and I just really enjoyed it. So definitely recommend. It was really sweet. My favorites, as I will talk about, is a bird called Freedom, which is actually going to be an excerpt of a book, of a young adult book that is going to come out in 2022. So I am very excited about that. It was set in Mizoram, which is a state that I haven't really seen too many books set in. So yeah, really excited about that. Then there's Happy New Year, which I really liked as well. And then there was Crip Gang, which was about like disability, and that was really nice, because in the end it had like just things you can do as a person who is like able, and how you could help a person who is disabled or differently able, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, then there was Big Mistake itself, which was really nice. It covered like themes of LGBT, and just bullying and stuff like that, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, these were 2 short story collections which I both gave 4 stars to, and I really liked. So check it out if you want to. Alright, moving on quickly. I think just quicker. So we are going to go to mysteries and thriller. So I read 3 books in this genre. The first one is this one, which is Billy Summers by Stephen King. I have spoken about this, done an entire video about this one, where I talk about it in deep detail, including my criteria for a great thriller, which are these ones, and what I felt about it based on those. But I gave this one a 3.5 stars. I thought that it was good, but it was sort of a middle of the path book. You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, so there's that. The other book that I read was The Box in the Middle of the Woods by Maureen Johnson. Now, this is part of the Truly Devious series. Truly Devious is supposed to be like a trilogy, but they added another book to it. So essentially, it follows this girl, forgetting her name now. Yes, her name is Stevie Bell. So Stevie was in the first 3 books in this place called the Ellingham Academy, which is a school for like gifted people who are essentially, they want to specialize in a certain thing, and they give you a scholarship to come and live in their campus, and then they help you with that certain thing. Stevie Bell is an amateur detective, so she is like a young Nancy Drew type person who wants to solve the murder of something that happened at Ellingham. So the first 3 books are about that, and then in the end, like, she solves it, blah blah blah. The 4th one now is that since she solved that murder, there has been like these murders that happened in a camp many years ago, and the new owner of the camp has called her in to like solve this murder because he thinks that it's going to be good press, etc. And yeah, so she comes there with her friends who she's allowed to bring, and it's a good fun time. I again read this in a day, because like that's the thing about Maureen Johnson, is that she writes very quick, snappy, like sort of books that are very readable, very bingeable. There are a lot of like twists that happen somewhere, so you're just like, ooh, what should I read next? But this one was like, I don't know, it kind of fell short for me. I kind of like wanted a little more. The end, I was like, really, I like, it's not unbelievable, but also like, you really, like, you'll see if you've read the book, you'll know what I mean. But it wasn't like disappointing, and it wasn't a bad book by any stretch of imagination. However, it did just fall like just a teeny bit short, which is why I still give it 4 stars, because I really liked my time reading it. But like, it wasn't like, wow, 5 stars, you know what I mean? Which is why I think when I read my third book, which is the third thriller, which is called The Dark and Secret Place, or Dog Rose Dirt in the UK, I really liked this one because it was dark and gritty, and if you like Criminal Minds, you will like this one, because essentially we are following this lady, this girl, who has lost her mother. Her mother has died of suicide, and she's come back home. They didn't have like the greatest relationship, they never really spoke as much, but she's come home and she has found these letters that her mum has written to this really big serial killer who is in jail. And she's just like, who is my mother and why is she writing letters to this huge, very famous serial killer? And what's also happened at the same point of time is that there are a lot of these copycat killings happening at the same point in time of that serial killer. So she's just like, what's going on? So she starts getting like involved in the investigation. There is like the main detective who like lets her talk to the serial killer because he only will talk to her. And she's just trying to find out more about like her mom, who she was actually, and like what exactly this was. I thought that it was really, really fast paced. I really enjoyed my time reading this one. I have heard that a lot of people did not like the gore and like the way it was described, because there's a lot of like body horror with regards to like how the murders take place. So yeah, definitely like keep that in mind. But I just really like the spooky, creepy vibes of this book. It was very like dark and grungy and dirty and like messed up, and like all of these characters were really like unlikable, but you still just wanted to know what was going on. So yeah, so that's what I felt about it. I gave it like 4.5, 4.25 sort of like vibes, and I genuinely really enjoyed my time reading this one. So yeah, if you're into that, then you will like it too. Alright, moving on, we go on to romance. So in romance, I read 2 books. One was romance and one was a little bit of erotica, but that's fine. Let's talk to you about them. So the first one is called Chup by Angie Hockman, and this one I heard a lot about generally on the interwebs, and I was interested in it because essentially we are following this girl who is works as like a social media executive for this. I'm liking how my hair is doing this. Anyway, she's like the social media executive for this company, which is like a cruise ship thingy, which does like what's it called, like exotic cruises and all of that sort of stuff. And yeah, so she does that, and she also has like this counterpart fellow who she does not like, and they are both up for the same promotion. So they are sent off to this cruise together to the Galapagos, and then like romance sort of ensues. So it's sort of like a it's enemies to lovers sort of trope, and this was sold to me as like the Unhoneymooners meets the Hating Game, and those are 2 books that I have really liked. So yeah, so it was definitely sort of that. I really liked it personally, and I know a lot of people didn't like it for the same reason, that there was a lot of marketing involved in this book. There were a lot of talks about marketing and social media campaigns and like digital marketing campaigns and things that you could do, which personally I found like super interesting because that's like my job. That's what I do. So I was like, while they were doing it, I was like, yeah, this would totally work. So like I was excited about that part as well. So yeah, so I liked that aspect of it. But I know a lot of people are just like, why are we hearing so much about marketing? Which I totally get. You're here for the romance, you're not here for marketing campaigns. So yeah, so I gave it like a 4-star because while I still liked it, it wasn't like, oh my god, chef's kiss, brilliant. But I still really liked it. I liked the characters, I liked the people. Characters were a little annoying though. They were a little like caricature-y, but it's cool. I didn't really go into this book thinking that I was going to get like these amazing characters that will stay with me forever. Clearly, because I don't even remember their names anymore. But it was still a good, cute book that I enjoyed. So I gave it 4 stars. The next one is the erotica that I read, which is Fans Only by B Love. And by the name, you would know that it's something about like OnlyFans, like the OnlyFans thing that was happening. At that point of time, there was like this whole thing about like OnlyFans, like removing sexual content, which I was just like, what would you then have on your like portal, dear sir, if not for sexual content and like whatever. So I decided to read this book, and it was really nice. It's about like 140 pages ish, and it's basically about two friends who like are best friends, but they sort of like are always at like loggerheads, and they have this sort of like attraction towards each other, but they don't really like address it because they're like always like getting on each other's nerves, and but yeah, they essentially decide to have sex for the camera, and do it for OnlyFans, and make money because they have bills to pay and things that they want to do, and like it just made sense for them. So yeah, that's what they did, and through that journey they start like maybe developing feelings for each other, but this wasn't like hardcore just about sex, which is what I thought it would be, but it was so like wonderfully like consensual, and like they had such like open conversations, which I was just like, wow, these guys are having some really good conversations about like sex and what you like and what you don't like, and like, is this fine for you? Are you developing feelings? Is this going to be a problem? Like, it was just like so wonderfully mature that I was just like, I really like this. Like, thank you for having this discussion. This was really nice and mature of you guys. So yeah, that's why I gave this book a 3.5, because I was like, not bad, guys. Yeah. Moving on, I read another book which was in mythology, which is the only book in mythology, but I've done a separate video for this where I've reviewed it. I gave this one 4 stars, and it is The Song of Draupadi by Mukhoty. I really like this one. It is basically the women of the Mahabharata, which is the epic Mahabharata, which is an epic in India, one of the two that we have mostly. Yeah, two which are most well known. And yeah, it just basically talks about the women, and gives you like a very angry but like self-righteous, but like not self-righteous. Self-righteous would be the wrong word to use here, but just very like, oh, it just gave me so much like anger and happiness because I was just like, yeah, women fighting back, not going against like just going against men, and like, you know what I mean? Like, I was just like, I was very happy when I was reading this book, because I've read the like Mahabharata all like my life, and I've just always hated the way like women were treated, or how they were like looked upon, or like how they were like said to be like these very like compliant women, and all of that sort of stuff, and I was like, no. So this gave a different take on that, which I really appreciated. So yeah, you can hear all of my thoughts in that video. And yeah, that it was a good time. I gave it a 4 star. Atmosphere, brilliant. Anyway, next, moving on. What do we have? Yes, I did a graphic novel in between because I was getting really bored. So I got the Sarah Anderson, who is a very famous not graphic novelist, but she does comics on the internet. Like, she puts up stuff on the internet, and it's really fun. It's about basically like her and adulting, and this book is called Adulthood is a Myth, and I really enjoyed it. It was super fun. Basically like an hour and 20 minutes where I was just like flipping through the book on my phone, and I was just laughing along, agreeing. I took a bunch of screenshots, such as this one, because I was like, yeah, this really like resonates, or like this one, which really resonated as well. But yeah, I had a really good time reading this one. It was a good filler read, and it resonates with you, you know, as a person, because I was in that zone where I was like, I don't want to adult. I don't even want to read a book right now. So I decided to read this one, and I was like, yep, yeah, and I gave it a 4 star. Alright, moving on to the genre of contemporary, which is the last genre, which has three books, out of which one was like my worst read, and then two were my best reads. So I'm going to go with the worst read first, which was Mapping Love by Ashwiny Iyer Tiwari. Now, Ashwiny Iyer Tiwari is a really famous like Indian director. I really love her work in general. I think that she is so amazing. I love the stories that she puts out, which is why I was really excited to read this book by her. And I have said in my review, which I put up on Instagram, is that the premise is super interesting. It's about basically this girl who was in the US, and she's come back to India because her mother has died, but she like couldn't come back for certain reasons, and she came back like a month and a half after like her mom died, and she's come home and she's found that her father is missing. So she's like, where is he? And is just then trying to find him, but like they've generally, all of them, like her whole family, which is the three of them, have had like a very fraught relationship. So it's her kind of like looking for her father but also looking for herself. She's gone through a lot in the US, and she's come here, and it's just like, it's really interesting, right? Like if you think about it, but it was just not executed in the best way. I felt like the author was being too flowery, and tried to be too literary in moments that really wasn't needed. Also, like, just there was like this insta love moment, which just like really bad, and I just did not like that part of it. Though I do think that like her general thought process in terms of like what this book should have been would have been great, but like it just wasn't like executed in the best sort of way. So I gave it a 2-star because I was just like, oh my god, this was not great. I also did not like the ending, but well, yeah, it was really simple, less than 200 pages or just about 200 pages, and I finished it in a day and a half. So I was like, whatever, it's cool. But yeah, wouldn't necessarily recommend, but we'll still look forward to reading more from Ashwiny Iyer Tiwari, because I think that like she had the right ideas. You know what I mean? So hopefully she just like gets better at her craft, because she's already so great at being a director. There was like this joke that I wanted to crack, but like I didn't want to put it up like in public, but I'm gonna say it now because it's also quite like further into the video, so hopefully like, you know, like it's fine. You know, the good ones have stuck around. So I was like, maybe you should stick with direction and not go in this direction of writing. It was quite mean, but it was also a funny joke, so I wanted to crack it. But yeah, that was that. Moving on to my two favorite books that I read this month that I've absolutely loved, gave 5 stars to. So the first one is The Performance by Claire Thomas, I would like to say. Yes, I was right. Okay, great. So this one is a very there's no real plot in this book, but essentially we are following 3 women, and they are at a play, and we get to hear their inner monologue. So there is a woman who is a professor. She's somewhat like 70s of sorts, like 60s, 70s, and she's talking about her life, like just generally we're in her head. So it's great. And then we have this other girl who's like in her early 20s. She's like the usherer person who's working at the theater. She's also wanted to be an actress, and she's talking about like various things, including like going vegan, or just like how she looks at the world, and climate change and all of that sort of stuff, and also like her relationship with her girlfriend and what that's like and all of that. And then there's the other person who is like this millionaire philanthropist, who came from like very humble like beginnings, and she's talking about like her life and how it became what it is, and she also went through some trauma, and just like where she is now and how people look at her differently now that she has money. And all of this is happening while there are like wildfires out in like Sydney. So they are in Sydney and there are fires outside in like the area surrounding the city, and that's all kind of like taking place. So it's just really interesting because it looked at like climate change, it looked at people in general, and I just really loved being in the heads of these 3 women. I especially loved loved the professor character. I just loved being in her head. It was just so witty and wry and just like so true. I just loved everything that they were thinking and saying, and the way that it flipped between person to person. There was also this brilliant moment that happened in like the intermission aspect of it, which like I was just like, what? I don't want to tell you what that was, but I was like, oh my god, this is happening. So yeah, I really liked reading this book. It was just really good. I love being in their heads, and I would love to be in their heads for longer. It was quite short actually, so I really wish I could have been there for a longer period of time. So yeah, definitely recommend this book. And then the last book that I want to talk to you about is my most favorite book that I read in the month, and it's probably going to be one of my favorites of the year. Top 10, if not top 5. Just stunning, brilliant piece of work, and that is Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. The book finished, and I was like, legit, I was like, cue Coldplay and let tears like stream down my face. That was essentially the vibe. But yeah, essentially we get to hear about this family, and we get to see like the mother and the father and how they grew up in Colombia, in Bogota. The father came from like a really like sort of bad, broken family, where it was a bad time, and he struggled a lot to like keep things together. The mother and her grandmother, like basically the mother and her mother, and how they kind of like kept things together as well. They were slightly more well off, but not as much. And just generally how they got together, what that was like, and then how they decided to move to America, and then had children. So there was one child who was born in Colombia, and then 2 that were born in the US. And then like it's just their struggle of being immigrants in the country, and then of course being undocumented in the country, and then of course something happens and the father is sent away, but then the mother, like they decide to send the youngest with the father, and in the very beginning we get to see how this girl is now put in like sort of like juvie in Colombia, and how she's like breaking out and trying to escape, and go back to her father and try to go back to the US to be with her mother. And it was just, I love this book so much. The characters are like people who are going to stay with me for a long time. I loved how on the surface they seemed like something else, but then once you get to know them, they were so much more. I loved the sort of mythology that was like woven in through it, and we got to hear of all these like stories of like their myths and their gods, and what that meant to like the family and to the people. We got to see what like Colombia was like back in the day, and then like how it's like changed, and just that, as well as like why do people like move, and what is the immigrant experience like, and what is it like to be like undocumented in the country. I feel like this is just such an important moving read, and it's quite short as well. I just loved this book so much. It is just stunning writing. You know for a fact that it comes from the author's heart. It just felt so like full of love and care and like compassion, and like just like just so many emotions, that you completely felt them on page. And I would so highly recommend this book. This book was just it really moved me, and if you have read this book, then please do like discuss this with me. If you have not read this book, please do read this book and then discuss it with me. It's just so wonderfully done. I would highly recommend. But yeah, that is the close to my 15 books that I read this month. I know that this video is slightly long. Like so far I have filmed for about 50 minutes. Anyway, thank you so much for following. Please do let me know down below if there are any books from here that you have read, that you plan to read, and what was your favorite book of August, if there was, because like recommendations, it's lovely. And also, as I said, introduce yourself if you haven't introduced yourself, and generally like I would love to get to know you. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.